contarte de algún modo lo que en la playa me pasó. Era muy blanca, era muy bella y sobre mi hombro se posó. Una bandada de palomas volaban juntas bajo el sol, marchaban libres y una de ellas vino a mi lado y se quedó. Una paloma blanca a los ojos me miró. Una paloma blanca al verme triste lloró, porque me marché muy lejos de ti. Si todavía sientes, niña, aquel amor que te juré, busca en el cielo y la paloma te contará lo que lloré. Una paloma blanca a los ojos me miró. Una paloma blanca al verme triste lloró, porque me marché muy lejos de ti. Porque me marché muy lejos de ti. Una
Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Hello.
I wasn't waiting for that to finish. I was just waiting for Mr.
I think we've got to dispense with that. That level of arrogance that comes with we can have a 5-minute run up is a bit over the top, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Sometimes it's needed, but I think we should introduce our guest, Mr. Jim Parker. That's the man. Every time I introduce him, he always looks over his shoulder. That is his trademark. Now, for those of you at home that don't know who Jim Parker is, where have you been living, first of all? Yeah. And secondly, how could you have missed the great work that this man does? Here is just a small collection, just a little highlight reel that I like to call Jim Parker.
Wake up, well I know I'm gonna be the man who wakes up next to you. When I go out, yeah I know I'm gonna be the man who goes along with you. If I get drunk, well I know I'm gonna be the man who gets drunk next to you. And if I haver, yeah I know I'm gonna be the man who's havering to you. But I would walk 500 miles and I would walk 500 more to be the man who walked 1,000 miles to fall down at your door. When I'm working, yes I know I'm gonna be the man who's working hard for you. When the money comes in for the work I do, I'll pass almost every penny on to you. When I come home, oh, I know I'm gonna be the man who comes back home to you. And if I drove, well, I know I'm gonna be the man who's going over you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jim Parker, the man from the telly.
In the 1980s, we marketed properties like this. In the 1990s, we did it like that. But now, it's 2022, we do it like this. So if you're thinking about moving in 2022, Don't get stuck in the 80s. Give us a call or click on the link below for more details.
Wow, is that me?
Mr. Jim Parker, the man from the telly.
I think, first of all, you've got to say congratulations, David, because you actually haven't allowed a guest to speak in the first 5 minutes you've got him on the show.
Yes.
You've probably done more damage to the union than the Tories have.
Listen,
Welcome, Jim. Welcome. How are you? I'll do the pleasantries. He's obviously there. How are you today, fine sir?
Absolutely fantastic. Wired and fired. Every single morning I get up and wired and fired, rearing to go straight away.
Okay, that's a bit sicking for those people who obviously find it a bit troubling, but that's very good. Jim, I mean, genuinely, just on there's a sheer body of work there, as they'd say wankily on the Oscars. But but that last bit there about the Batman style, obviously 80s thing, and then how you're presenting it now. That's a perfect bit of how to use social, isn't it? Really, in this day and age.
I take great inspiration from other people around about me, really. That's what it comes down to. So I know I can't take credit for all of that. It's just the fact that I just see so many wonderful pieces of work that everybody does that I kind of think, well, it's the Japanese mentality, just take what somebody else has got and make it better.
Yeah, perfect. Absolutely. But you're on the wrong show if you're not going to take the praise. To be honest, we're all about I did it all here.
Oh well, I did it my way then.
Yeah. Jim, on that point, who catches your eye? Who do you take inspiration from out there?
Oh, geez, in the stage the world, it's the Chris Watkin, Stephen Brown. It's you guys. I mean, you guys are really good at what you do as well. It's Tom Panas, it's Lisa Novak.
Define what we do, Jim. That's what we need to define.
Yeah, it's Ryan Sergeant. That's the new one. Grant Cardone. All these different people. It's like it's people that I recognise that are far superior in an area that I could learn from. And I just absorb that as much as possible. I've become a human sponge. That's it, really. That's all it comes down to.
So Jim, tell us about what happened before that. I mean, how did you get into this? Where did it all start?
I've been in property for about 30 years. I was originally a financial controller and financial director in the industry. So I helped run some manufacturing companies locally. So it was. But I recognised at that time, I never wanted to be owned and controlled by anybody else. And I actually thought being an accountant would bring me to be a millionaire. It's like no.
It can if you're working for Enron.
Yeah. And potentially I didn't know what was available at that time. But I knew I had a deep down desire to succeed, but I didn't know what that was, and it was just a case that I just kept learning from other people. It's the old thing about preparation. Prepare, because at some point in time the opportunity will arrive and you'll be lucky enough to get it. And that's it. And everybody goes, oh, you were lucky. But I always say to people, really, luck means labour under correct knowledge. That's what it comes down to. And it's preparation is the key for everything. And I talked to my team about that on Friday, actually, about the same thing. I says, you don't understand what I can see in you, but I know you've got what it takes to make it happen. But you have to believe that within yourself. That's really what it comes down to. And I have a deep down firm belief that I'm destined for something greater, and I need to keep preparing for that time.
Well, now you've achieved the pinnacle of your career by appearing on this show.
That's it then.
What's retirement look like for Jim Parker?
Go downhill after this, eh?
but Jim, I think the hallmark of your agency and pretty much everything you do on I mean, I jokingly refer to you as the man from the telly, because if there's perhaps one person I see more on the screen than I do myself or Mr. Whale, it's you. You're everywhere at the moment. Everywhere you turn, you're running community stuff. You're literally running across the country. You are highlighting all the good works that go on in the places that you serve. You're interviewing local people. You run what I would call general interest shows. So you don't necessarily go in there saying, I'm Jim Parker, best estate agent in town, please use me to sell your house. But you're telling them about what's going on in the wider market. You're doing stuff on just different topics that grab the attention. You really have leveraged video more than perhaps anybody else I've seen, certainly anybody else I've seen in Scotland. So tell us, like, there must have been a point at which you decided, that's it, I'm all in on video.
I genuinely think it was down to Chris Watkin. It was, probably 2.5, maybe 3 years ago. I saw something that Chris was talking about, some video course, and I thought, this is something I probably want to go to. I definitely realised, probably my experience from Century 21 back in 2010 was a revelation as well, because I used to go to the States for their conventions, and they were using video like normal practice. But the difference at that time was it was prohibitive to us because the investment we need in order to do it. We didn't, because we hardly get anything. You get 7% for selling a house over here. We get between 1 and 2. So you can't afford the investment of what they were doing in 2010. But as technology's advanced and it's got a lot better, and you can literally be on television now, right now, as we speak, like what we're doing right now, for a fraction of the cost. And so it was something I always wanted to do from 2010, and I did start doing something like that in 2010. A lot of the stuff people are actually using now, I did in 2010, but it's old technology now to me. It's way in the past. So it's bringing it into the forefront now, and being able to the cost for entry is so minimal now. It's so simple to do.
And so you've become a household name within the industry, and I think a lot of agents are sort of looking to you as an example of what can be done on a local basis. But we don't know what goes on in Fife. Tell us, what's the net result of using all of that video? Like, what does it feel like to walk through Fife on an average Sunday? Do you get recognised? Are you the man from the telly?
Well, I was standing in the queue yesterday at Silverburn at the local park, and someone actually stopped in the queue and went, "I recognise you're the guy from the telly." And it's like, and I'm like, "Aye," and I immediately just I just accept it. It's like, but I don't revel in it, to be honest. It's people see me. It's a medium I use in order to get my message across, in order to get the message across for the local community. It's a fantastic tool to do that. I did actually, I asked her about her name, and I says, "Look, next time I'm on and you see me live, just say hello." I'd love that, because it's all about the audience, really. At the end of the day, it's nothing to do with me. It's about engaging with someone, and it's things that I want to know myself. I kind of think other people would want to know as well. So you attract to people that you attract, and that's it. You can't be everything to everyone.
I say that.
Jim, maybe we could bring this back to Mr. Whale's topic, a speciality topic. But when it comes to Proptech, just interesting to know what it is that you guys use and love up there. Is there anything in particular that has sort of streamlined your business or given you a bit of an edge?
Me.
Nice.
And genuinely, that's what it is. Genuinely, and it's the investment I've put in myself over the years of the books I've read and the people I've learnt from. It's actually allowed me to have that unique advantage. It can't be duplicated by anyone else.
That's the key thing, isn't it? If you do that, how can anyone mimic a personal brand?
You've basically got it closed down straight away, and you will attract the people you attract. But you, as I say, you don't attract anyone. You don't need everybody. It's like, you just need some people to buy into what you want to do. And if they're on the same page as you, then they'll buy your services. That's what it comes down to. And I'm every single day, I get up, a punch the air, and I think, fantastic, it's a great day. But I also really thank for the privilege, actually, for people actually coming to me and using me. I still can't understand why somebody would, it's this, you ever heard of imposter syndrome?
Yeah.
One day somebody's going to find out about me. and that's kind of, so it shows you that mentality. how I still think. I just think it's me. It's just what I do, really. I'm not being anything different than I normally do. It's just so happens there's maybe a few hundred or maybe a few thousand other people that will get to see that. That's it, really. That's all it comes down to. I've always been like this.
There's a rather wanky business phrase, isn't there, that they talk about, understanding your kind of minimum viable audience or stuff like that. And when we were talking about the great imposter himself, and if you look at the likes of Donald Trump, and still 30% of Americans still absolutely, if not more, absolutely believe in him. And here's the thing: if you can convince just that Trump level of audience, any agent that had 20 or 30% of their marketplace is going to be absolutely dominant, aren't they, and have a successful business. So I think there's a real, not that you're saying anyone should follow the Trump model, but it's just a fact of life, isn't it? Is you don't need to, as you said there, you don't need to be all things to all people. Understand who your demographic is and develop that, nurture that, turn them into your shouting advocates, and you're not going to go far wrong, are you?
Absolutely. I mean, my demographic is probably 40-year-olds upwards. That's it, really. That's the market I'll appeal to, the elderly audience especially, because I've just studied it and understood what people want from me, and I ask them what they want from me, and I'm prepared to deliver that no matter what it takes. If it means working on Christmas Day to make it happen, I will do that.
What's it then to your competition doing? Because when you tend to see something like this kind of, I won't say phenomenon, but let's just call it that anyway, you either do two things. You either see loads of people copying, or you get loads of people then saying, oh, I don't like what he does, and they veer even further away, which of course is perfect for people like yourself, because then you get to own the area. What have they tended to do up there? Have they
I don't care. It's as simple as that. It's really, I don't care. I don't care what the competition does. It's like, they can go and do what they want, but they'll never be us. They'll never be me.
I'll be honest, Jim. I told Mintzy, I said, I want Jim on the show, and you're not disappointing at the moment.
I love it.
I genuinely, used to, when I first started out, I watched the competition all the time. I always felt that I was competing against them.
Yeah.
But as I began to realise, and I began to read, and I began to learn from people more successful, what I realised is the only person you should compete against is yourself. Yeah. That's it.
It's really interesting dichotomy there, Jim, between that whole imposter syndrome, I don't know why people would come to me, and that absolute confidence that some people could, if they wanted to, misinterpret for arrogance, that you are on top of your game, that you are in your lane, and you are just simply not going to sort of look at what other people are doing. Is that something you've always had? Is that, I mean, you've been that way since you were a kid?
I'll completely agree with you. There's times that I look at myself and think, that boy's a funny. And it's like, and genuinely, I actually think that about myself. Sometimes I think, he's an arrogant prick, at the end of the day, but it's not meant to come across as that. It's just meant to be, it's confidence. But remember, that confidence only comes with conditioning. And it basically is the books you read and the people you associate with. So I've no doubt that I've become more confident as a part of being in the industry and being around people like yourselves, being around people like the Novaks, being around people in America as well, and understanding how they are, and you get like the people you associate with. So that's what it comes down to. The people are far more successful in areas of life and business and everything that they do. It's the people you associate with. It brings that confidence round about you because you're in that community.
Brits don't do confidence very well, do we, Jim?
We're the first people to run ourselves down. It's the classic example. You can see it now on some of the companies that are, some of the successful companies in Britain. They've got them straight on the television, and they're trousing them straight away. And I'm thinking, geez, what more could you think of that? We get a successful company, we should be shouting from the rooftops that we've got a successful company, and we should bang in the drum and encourage them to grow as big as possible in order to manufacture more jobs for people and more wealth creation for people. And what do we do in the media? We just look at opportunities to knock them down. It's absolutely mental.
Yeah, it's great. It's a crazy feature, isn't it? It's and just with the right right level of self-deprecation, hopefully you can get away with it anyway, can't you? But
Yeah.
you mentioned like the likes of Lisa Novak and obviously the internationals and this. There's not even a thought, is there, about presenting that confident image and everything else. And if what we know, everyone tells you about business is that you want expertise. That's why you're coming to people like your good selves out there. If you can't have the confidence to put that across, you're always going to be selling yourself short, aren't you? Which is a crazy, as David used. I can't believe it's the first time we've used dichotomy on this podcast.
Well, it's just strange because over here it's almost like we have to be embarrassed. If your business is going really well and somebody asks you how it's going, you have to sort of always downplay it, or you have to sort of not really sort of tell them what's going on behind the scenes, or the fact that you are actually having a good year. I think the last year, 2021, was probably very challenging for the estate agency industry as a whole, because they had on the one hand, they were doing very, very well due to the surge in demand. On the other hand, we had that double embarrassment of being the only industry pretty much that had a bit of a kick after COVID. So it's been a very challenging year for people being self-confident, put it that way.
I think you're always going to have somebody that's going to come out the woodwork and rain on your parade. That's always going to be the case. You're just going to have to accept that. Tell you what, though, you've got to love the trolls, because at the end of the day, the trolls are actually the people that actually push you out to the wider audience, because not everybody else around the circle is going to agree.
They're the most engaged, aren't they, Jim? By definition.
Absolutely. They want to go on about you all the time. They'll maybe post on it. And then the great thing is when they post on your post and say something, it's like all their friends get to see it. And their friends probably don't think the same as they do. And as a result, what happens is you get exposure as a result of that. So the trolls, I've got to thank them all. Everybody
love the trolls. But maybe we should come up with a troll service, David, at Kerfuffle, and sort of outsource troll service.
Well, if your videos aren't doing very well, we can just sort of comment on them and just be really sort of abusive.
Chris Watkin actually said if you stick an angry face on somebody's video, then you get more traction. So we were all going about putting angry faces on each other's videos.
Jim, do you, just on a practical level, though, if somebody else does get trolled, what's your approach? Do you face them? Do you ignore them? Do you take them head on? What's your approach with these wonderful trolls?
I'll look to see where they come from. If they're not local to us, it's ban and delete.
Okay.
You're out of my life, pal. Beat it.
So not look where they come from, as in follow them home, take photos.
No. Just have a quick look at their profile or the rest of it. If it's somebody that's, if it's not anybody that's any relevance, it's like they're just bitter with life. They're obviously bitter with their own circumstances, and they want to take it out on the rest of the world at the fact that they've had the wrong end of the stick. But the reality is they don't know the only person to blame is the person sitting right in their seat. That's it. And they'll never know that. I always, there's some people will like this and some people will not like it. But there's a well-known phrase from a really successful Canadian Century 21 owner who was a multi-millionaire who owned the Major Master franchise. And he says, pigs don't know, pigs stink. That's the reality. And he's got a fantastic book called that. It's and it's true. So you've got to take that into account. There's some people that can never be helped because they just don't want to be helped. They just want to see the world burn regardless of the cost.
Yeah.
I work with a couple of those people. It's particularly when I wake up on a Monday morning, I check my TikTok and it's Simon Whale just sauntering across the screen in the All Together. I think, Why?
Hey, listen, you've got to take your hat off to him because it's absolutely fantastic. It really, it's a masterclass in marketing, put it that way. Because he draws you in, doesn't he?
It is indeed. You cannot ignore.
If I'd taken the hat off, there'd have been nothing else left.
I'm gonna watch a short clip with you that I saw from the Bulldog brothers. Neil and Matt seem to be fast becoming LinkedIn personalities and offering opinions on most things in the industry. We've already heard from Matt. This week is Neil. Here you go.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. I just want to talk about Proptech today and technology within the property industry, because it's a real buzzword, and we're all always looking for that next new shiny thing that can help us to run our business and revolutionise our business and create efficiencies, etc., etc. But what I often find is people implement the Proptech within the business and then just rely on it. And what I want to get across is that Proptech is just a tool. It's a tool to run your business, and it's a tool to create efficiencies and help you to reduce staff costs, of course, and or just create general efficiencies in the way you do things. So what happens is, and we employ a lot of Proptech in this business. We've got a sort of a specialist piece for kind of every part of the lettings journey and some of the sales as well. But what I sort of find is people will implement the Proptech and then think it's the Proptech's responsibility to do the job. And actually, that's, in my opinion, that's the wrong view, because really and truthfully, it is just a tool to help you to do the job and to create the efficiency. And you still need people behind it, checking what is actually going on and making sure the right information is put into the piece of Proptech to allow it to do its job. And of course, you can't have the expense of all this Proptech and all the staff. That wouldn't work. And the whole point of implementing systems is to reduce costs and create efficiencies, or create the efficiency so that your staff can actually spend their time on business and pound generating activities. But often people will just input the piece of Proptech and almost forget about it. And my view is that really it's just the tool, and what you should be sort of thinking about it as is, it's like having a hand drill. How long would it take you to drill a set of holes? You implement the Proptech into your business, and all of a sudden you've just inherited yourself a power drill, and now you can do things a lot more quickly and efficiently. So that is really my opinion of how we should all be viewing Proptech, and not looking.
There we go. I mean, he goes on to sort of restate that in various different ways, but that's the general message. I think for most of us, that is the perfect sort of view of where Proptech should sit within any property business, that it should only be there to create efficiencies. I don't know what your view is, Jim.
Yeah, absolutely. It's probably a lesson I've learned since Century 21, and the fact that and the shiny pennies come along all the time. Classic example of I just look at booming as another gimmick. That's really how I look at it. It's a gimmick. That's it. And people are jumping on the bandwagon saying this is the greatest. This is the greatest. It's like, well, it'll be here today and it'll be gone tomorrow. That's the reality.
What does it have to? What does a Proptech solution have to do, Jim, to really get your attention?
Sustainability. Is it something you can run with for the rest of for always, and is it something that could actually integrate into your current system? That's really what it comes down to, because it's the core things every single time. Stephen Brown actually, Stephen, we have Stephen all the time. Like, it's like a coach for athletes. Every single week, Stephen comes in and he trains our group. But every single week, I keep focusing them back on the basics and fundamentals, because that's the core principle of every single business. It's basics and fundamentals every single time. It will never, ever change. In 50 years' time, it will still be the same thing. It's the core foundation of everything we do. What happens round about that, it's just glitz and glamour it add to that package and makes you stand out from the crowd. So, if it's something that's sustainable and it will stay there for the long term, fantastic. Instant valuation tools, they're really good, but you've got to choose the right one.
I mean, I'd go further with what you're just saying there. For me, I'd play that video to anybody thinking about starting up their own agency, really, wouldn't you? That's not a bad starting point to start thinking about what structure, what foundation do I want to look at before you go out and go absolutely crazy. Because I'll be honest, Jim, one of the things we didn't think was going to be a particularly not profitable or engaged part for us was for those people starting agencies, because we thought obviously they're going to be watching cash flow. And actually, that's been the exact opposite. We've seen so many people who are starting up and they've literally gone in and invested off the cuff in like 10 or 20 suppliers, which is just, it seems insane to us. I mean, clearly, the Kerfuffle model is we get paid on referrals, but we've always also had a very firm view that you need to take it very steadily and make sure you've got the right balance of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I just react sometimes, well, how can you possibly assimilate all of that tech, especially when you're doing it in such a short period of time?
And I think you also need to be mindful of the fact that organic growth and the lessons you learn from organic growth can be very, very valuable. So I did an MOT last week with an agency that only had, they started up mid-COVID. They'd only got a handful of properties managed, I think 10. And I said, look, the first 10 is always the hardest slog. It starts to sort of gain momentum after that. And in some respects, that organic growth and the lessons you learn along the way of having to do things yourself when you're that small and you're effectively a startup are things that you can't delegate to somebody else. And implementing a boatload of tech is just going to, I think, laden that business down with processes that they're not going to learn from straight off the bat. And I think that later on down the line, it will make them fly, it will make them efficient. But I somehow missed that early slog of getting from 0 to 10. I mean, it just felt every single one of them. I can remember each battle, but it was great. Jim, it must have been the same with you guys.
Now, so you thrive on the excitement.
I'm all about the chase, Jim. I'm all about the chase.
You're what we call a serial starter-upper.
That's me.
Didn't get me wrong. That's what I was in the beginning, and I learned off of somebody else far so more successful than me. He says, Jim, boring pays well. I went, what do you mean by that? And he says, well, what you've got is you love the journey and starting up. So you start on the bottom and you get the excitement, the curve goes right up and you get really excited about the whole journey. And you get to a plateau where it starts to level out a bit because the excitement no longer there. You're still making money. But this is the point in time where you think to yourself, do you settle? Do you work it out from there what the next step in your journey is? Or do you self-sabotage in order to get the excitement again? Now, a lot of people actually just walk away because I'm not excited anymore. It doesn't excite me. But it's like at that point in time, you should be reaping the rewards of what you've just done. But you should learn what the next steps is from somebody more successful than you that you want to get to. And that's where a lot of people battle it out. And I've learned to become bored because it does pay well.
There's good money in being bored. Yeah, I suppose that there's something in that. I think a lot of agents are like that. They love that thrill of the chase.
That's why they get in it. That's why people love a state agency. It's like there's loads of people like that. Oh, I love looking around houses, and it's like that's not what we do. That's just not what we do. We take somebody from this pain point in their life, and we find out and work out a way how to get them over here to the where it all happens for them, and we make it happen. And that is the bridge that we cross between the two divides from here to here, and that's it.
Going to share a little bit of news with you guys from this week, just to review, because it's I suppose a little bit controversial, but also what makes this a bit peculiar in a slow news week. This was probably the only story that I can remember, and it's probably the only time that I've ever had anything really positive to say about our purple friends. But here we go. So this is the story of Purple Bricks removing a listing after the owners, who I think were very devoutly Christian, refused to show a same-sex couple the house, and they went so far as to sort of quote words from the Bible when they rejected them, as it all being a sinful desire and a shameful act, which obviously has no place today. And I was quite almost sort of, I was just reading this article wishing that Purple Bricks are going to end the story nicely, and they did. And I think Purple Bricks have put out one of those statements where they say they're proud to celebrate diversity and so on, and also they have released the vendors from their obligations and refunded whatever monies that they've paid. I don't know whether this is an elaborate PR exercise, dressed up as a heartwarming story, but certainly the comments section was on fire, and our friend Agent PB, who never has anything good to say about Purple Bricks, found himself really in a very difficult place. But I'm just going to fast forward to almost the very last comment that was left by an agent called John Murray, who did a similar post actually on LinkedIn, and I think this sort of sums up my view of it. He said, "I saw a post today about a Christian couple refusing to sell their home to a same-sex male couple. Just putting it out there regarding my personal biases as an estate agent and fellow human being. My son Jacob is a gay man, and last year we had the most wonderful day towards the end of last year where he married the love of his life, Connor. My only daughter Lydia is in love with a black man whom we love unconditionally. My eldest son Jamie is in love with a lovely heterosexual girl called Emily. I think as a family, we have most bases covered here. 2 of my children work at the NHS 111, helping people. My eldest is a musician, as is his girlfriend, and they bring musical joy and life to people on a daily basis. Oh, and by the way, I too am a Christian, just an inclusive one, I suppose." So I rather like that. That, you know, not your average troll right there, but there's a lot of love there, and it's an interesting sort of talking point in terms of what discrimination might mean for agents nowadays. We've come across it in the past. It does exist out there where people have different viewpoints, and certainly you as an agent, you're not allowed, and you're required to not tolerate them.
Yeah.
I don't know if you fellas saw this.
I did, and I was going to treat it with my normal level of seriousness, and you know, it has all the makings of it. If you were to go with where I normally start, almost like a League of Gentlemen sketch, doesn't it? With this kind of firebrand religious couple taking out. I was imagining these outrageously camp fellas kind of winding it up and everything else. And then I thought it led into the stereotype where the fella said, you know, he admitted he thought it was a joke himself. And then he was upset and angry and fell into the stereotype of phoning his mum. But I then came back and I thought, it's horrific. It's absolutely horrific in this day and age that, you know, they can actually have their dreams, and it shows that that all these bigotries that, you know, we used to think we were actually getting rid of and educating, whether it was Trump, whether it was Brexit, they were literally that we weren't educating people there. They were literally just they realized they weren't allowed to talk about them openly. And I think one of the most distressing things about the last 2 or 3 years is that people have felt with these bigotries that actually now they are okay to come out, and you know that the whole woke thing is kind of you know, you just get away with saying, oh, stop being so woke about everything. But it's pretty shocking, isn't it, in this day and age? The only thing I would say about Purple Bricks is did they actually give the money back to the vendors, or did they just take the listing off? Because that would have been
No, so there was much comment online about what Purple Bricks should do with this money. So a lot of people, if you read the comments, were saying, "Look, don't give the money back to these vendors. Don't reward them effectively. Take the money off them. Give it to a charity. Make it go to something that's inclusive. Make a point of it."
That's what I would do.
I'd have bought some outrageous pillows.
I know exactly what you would have done, Mr. Whale, and you would have wreaked havoc on that little village there. Jim, you would have taken the money and given it to a worthy cause.
I would have found the nearest charity that is inclusive and gay and everything like that, and given it to them because they deserve it. And it's but if I did, and I'll make a call out straight away because I have put this on my channels anyway and shared it with people. If that's your way of thinking, don't come to me to sell your property. That's the reality. I'm no interest.
Oh, Mr. Jim Parker, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, I do genuinely love that. And I think this is I think we've all been there, haven't you? Whether it's a racist taxi driver or somebody stuck in a pub and they think that they're going to get you on board and they start telling you outrageous, bigoted opinions on whatever it is. And actually, you know what? I know myself, I've done it, and I know loads of my friends have done it, where you don't want to have the argument. It's just a dickhead, so you stay quiet. And I think one of the things that I have been challenged on by many, many people and friends now is that you realise that if you remain quiet, you're actually a little bit complicit. And it takes courage to do, but you've got to stand up to these people and those opinions, because otherwise that education piece we were talking about never really happens, does it? Because they do think that at least people, they might not be supporting their vision, but they don't have a problem with it. And if they do realise that actually the vast majority of people have an issue with these outdated beliefs, then hopefully we're going to finally get round to them.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I'd like to think that it's part and parcel of sort of living or raising kids in a modern world, that they are brought up in a naturally more inclusive environment where they can choose to be whatever they want to be. Whereas you weren't necessarily given those freedoms when you were growing up in the bad old days, where other people's beliefs were sort of, shoved down your throat. And I think that today, a kid getting to, let's say, our industry in 10 years' time has got a better chance, I'm hoping, of being a decent human being. That's got to be the way, right? Just tell me I'm right.
No, you are. I showed our kids 8.5 hot mum the other day. The look that Millie gave me with what she termed casual racism. I said, no, it was a different time. I thought I genuinely started to sound like every elderly relative that we all have sort of listening behind. I do like your point, though, as well, David. I love the idea that this was some sort of really cynical part of corporate greenwash. Next week, we're going to see someone, somebody saves a dog or something over at that particular agency, and just keep coming out with more positive stuff.
If you've been in that type of industry and you've been at board level, then straight away that's PR, and that's all it comes down to. Because I've sat and watched across the board table, certain decisions being made, and why is our profits bad? Well, what can we blame it on? What's happening in the economy we could actually blame it on now? And literally that's what happened every single time when you sat on the board.
You're absolutely right, Jim. Actually thinking about that now, I didn't think about whereas on the face of it, and what would come out of it is obviously it's ordinarily the right response or something out there, but it actually hasn't come from the right position, hasn't it? It hasn't come from you feel outraged in your heart on something like that. So it's
I think you're probably right. I think a smaller agency in a pocket of England or the UK that didn't really want to serve these vendors, but also wanted just to get on with life, I don't think this would have reached the front headlines of the Daily Mail. I don't think that this would have leaked out into the industry press. And somebody somewhere made the decision thinking, look, it's probably a little bit of virtue signaling at the end of the day. But I don't want to take away from the fact that these guys have, for once, done the right thing and they've done something good. And if they think they can milk it for publicity, fantastic for them. I think it's going to take more than that for the public to fall back in love with them, if they ever were in love. But certainly it's something. Yesterday when I was discussing this with, I was discussing it with Megan 18 actually, and she said that discrimination within our industry, if you like, sometimes has been, it's not been as obvious as that. So when you talk about sort of renting out houses to DSS tenants, for instance, as we used to call them back in the day, that again was one form of almost blanket discrimination that happened day in, day out. Now it's less prevalent, where you just simply dismiss somebody because of their economic circumstances and say, look, I'm sorry, I just don't deal with, my landlords don't deal with people like you. but it needs thinking about. There are little bits.
I mean, there's still just ignorance there. There's, you know, there's not. It's never a couple of months without somebody saying, "I've had this person come back to me, you know, complaining about no DSS or something else," and then you know, the agents pointing out, "Well, you can't do that," and genuinely the person reacting almost with horror or ignorance that wasn't the case. So you know, it definitely still does go on, doesn't it? So it's not surprising that we hear more and more of these stories.
What they fail to remember, though, is it's not the person itself, it's the system and how it's administered. That is the problem for most people. It's nothing to do with the person. And I've always done that from the very beginning when I first started out in buy-to-let about 30 years ago, is every single advert I had, it said DSS welcome every single time, because I felt that was what I had to do in order to change people's opinions. And I was at the front end of it every single time. I felt like a social worker most of the time, to be honest. But I really got an insight into how that system works for people and how that system is. And at one point in time, I was in that system myself for a brief moment. So I understood it completely. And it's not a great place to be. And it's almost a poverty trap for people. But it shouldn't, because you're on DSS. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be the definition of you, and it shouldn't define you, because there's fantastic people out there that will look after their property from start to finish, and they'll be even improved by the time they hand it back, who are on benefits. And then there's other people who are working, who hands their house back like a shithole.
Yeah.
So what does that say?
Podcast for me there, Jim. You've summarised that absolutely brilliantly there. I think that's really absolutely spot on.
Fantastic. I've got to say though, there are not genuinely, unless I've never really heard of it, but there are very few incidents that kind of come to the fore like this. And on the whole, I would like to think, and I think Megan probably likes to think this as well, that our industry is probably lead, you know, as service providers that cover most of the members of the public in all different communities across the whole of the UK. I think we've done a fairly good job of making sure that we are, you know, open to being as inclusive as possible, and making sure that things run along nicely. But here we go. Here's Megan. I agree with you, Jim. The system's flawed, but I do think the stereotypes of those who are in need of the system are all tarred with the same brush. Look at J.K. Rowling. She wrote Harry Potter whilst on the system.
Yeah, exactly. Can I just disagree with you again, though, Mintzy? That was story of the week, because there was one that jumped out at me that you'll understand why this got my attention.
I was going to hope you had a segue to something. So go for it.
Living near a butcher could boost house prices. This is the sort of demographic. This is the sort of stuff that, forget all your private schools or whatever, your grammar schools and everything else there. Living near a butcher, says Winkworth, they have a butcher's index as a light-hearted way to define a super suburb, which means that Hereford must be some of the most expensive property in the country, because I seem to remember there was about 7 butchers just on the high street there when I walked up it. Well, don't you think I love the idea that sort of boutique.
So your proximity to a good pork sausage is what now makes the value of your price go up.
Now, hang on a minute. Were you being a bit dirty there? Was that your euphemisms again? Again, that's unsurprising. I've managed to lose another demographic on our show.
I think that if you were to look behind what they're actually saying, other than being, again, in a very slow news week, that will become a headline. Yeah. I think the actual sense behind that is, and I think Jim probably find this, that villages and towns that have traditional local shops that you can walk into where you're served by an expert. So, you know, if you want to just get any cut of meat and you don't care what it is that you're eating necessarily, you can go and do that at a local, a big chain supermarket. You go in, you buy your meat, it's going to be cheaper. Some of it's good stuff, some of it's a bit rubbish. But if you want to go in and deal with...
You eat most of it though, yeah, Dave?
Yeah, well, yeah, the kosher bits. But if you go in and then you go into a specialist butcher, these guys will know their craft intimately. They will know all about the different cuts of meat. They'll ask you what it is that you're cooking. They'll maybe give you some tips of how
I've
to
never
do
seen
it.
you so passionate on anything we've discussed on this podcast.
I just, I know, but and the reason.
If there was a fishmonger, genuinely,
Yeah.
this is how bad it is. That to me it would genuinely be, a massive decision in me buying a house. I think you are right. I'm not going to start going on about.
If you're a foodie, or if these things sort of matter to you, and it's in the same way that we're trying to change the sort of perception of our industry by adding value and saying, look, I'm not just here to flog you a house. If you want to just buy a house off Rightmove, you can go somewhere else. But if you're interested in knowing how close it is to the local butcher or to the local school and why it is that you're going to want to live here, I don't need to tell you that. I'm going to talk to the man on the ground in Fife, Mr. Jim Parker. What do you got to say?
It's customer experience, isn't it? It's there's a, you could look at the high street right now. I talked about this yesterday and something else to someone else about this. But the ones that are winning are the local villages, because they have that genuine customer experience, like you said, David. The ones that are winning at the other end are the supermarkets, because they have the volume discounts. The ones in the middle and the high streets are lost in translation, because they've got no definitive purpose anymore. The high street should be an experience for people, and it should be an engaging experience. If you want to buy anything else, you just go online and buy it. That's the reality. So it's just like a estate agency. People will buy the volume end, which is the Aldi's and Lidl's, which is Purple Bricks, which is the big volume agents like Your Move and Countrywide and all the rest of it. And then we're at the other end, which is the Marks and Spencer's, the Waitrose end as well. And then there's a middle, which is Asda's, Tesco's. And you find there's a lot of people in there now in the middle. They have no clear proposition about what they want to do and how they want to get there. And they find themselves struggling every single day for business.
Yeah, the famously Sainsbury's and Tesco's didn't know where to really place themselves, did they? Got caught. Being caught in that middle ground is never great, is it? Where you're, dare I say it, bland. And, our friend Seth Godin and his Purple Cow, it's all about standing out and developing, I suppose, taking us right back to the start of this podcast, isn't it? About understanding who your demographic is and working to develop that, rather than trying to, I think in my old world, people know my background, obviously there. My mistake was in the early days, we did try to pretend that we were for everybody, for smaller agents. And the simple truth was we tended to, at that time, have a proposition for the mid to larger agents. And the problem is you just water down your pitch, don't you? Because you try to be so bland with the messaging.
It does bring us back full circle to what you asked Jim as well, in terms of what the competition do when he's being so vocal on social media, and all of a sudden he's everywhere, and he's a very personable man on the ground in that local area. What they go and do, but the truth of the matter is, it's very hard to make up that ground. You cannot suddenly switch over from being a Sainsbury's and start having a kind and caring local shop persona, where you're forcing yourself almost to be nice. And I think the public see that. What do they say? I think they say that sincerity is the hardest thing to fake, but if you can do it, you can be an estate agent. But I think genuinely, I think that's where it's at. I think sometimes the ground in between, say, where Jim is and where a large chain supplier would be in terms of estate agents, is so vast, and you can't just make that up by doing simple campaigns. You really need to get your hands dirty and get ingrained in those local places. And I'm not sure local people will open their hearts and their homes to big corporate entities. I think there is, certainly coming out of COVID, there seems to be this focus on supporting local small businesses. And certainly, I think this is bringing it back to your pork sausage. I think if I could be so bold, I think this is what it comes down to. The public do actually care where they spend their money, and if they have to spend their money, why not support local businesses?
Can I suggest they always talk the talk, didn't they, about small business? But it's probably only now that they're actually really genuinely starting to practice it and do. We've all been there and seen a particular restaurant disappear. That and you think, well, I really like that, but when was the last time you went? And so people are remembering that these things, if they are going to survive, you obviously got to back them, but. I don't know what the message is. So
the message is, don't put a post on social media saying that you support local business, because I tell you what, your actions will speak louder than words, and that's what it comes down to. And I felt that if I needed to do that, that's why I need to get out there and do something about local business. Hence the reason why I do a lot of blogs and vlogs about them, because I just love to know what other people do. I just love the transition that they took in order to take that. I mean, look at the girl from Cake Lab. It was local to me. Cake Lab. Where did that come from? Well, I was a scientist in industry, and it was like, what? You were a scientist, and then you became a cake maker. It's like, when does that come?
How many times have we heard that story?
That's unbelievable when you think about it. And for me, that's a brilliant story. I love that. And that's why I would love. That's why I think everybody else would love that as well. And that's why I do what I do, for that reason. Because
it needs those.
What's the point of me doing it?
It needs somebody to tell those stories, though. And this is probably a message to any estate agent out there. These people are not necessarily going to go and tell their own stories.
They're terrified.
And if you can help them to do it, it'd be a brief interview. If you can drop down and see them, you will get that message out into the wider world that this is a local business worth supporting, but B, you're informing the world what that journey looks like, and that perhaps inspiring the next person to go ahead and take the courage to do it themselves, if they've got an idea. And I think the time is now. I think there is no time like the present, whilst we're rebuilding and our government seems to have better things to do with its time than actually help us do that. We need to do it ourselves. And that means supporting each other, and that means supporting our local industries and local retailers. So that's Mintzy's message of the day. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for the sermon.
If it is to be, it's up to me. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, that's a really great message, isn't it? And actually, just before we, I want to say as well, congratulations out to Robert May, obviously, with his deal with CoreLogic. Robert's been in the industry as long as anybody has, and he does try to do the right thing all the time. And I think it's great to see his business. And I've been saying it for a while. I don't know if you remember. A lot of people don't really know this CoreLogic, but I've been saying for some time that I think they've got a massive part to play in the tech scene going forward, seeing how big they are in America and where I first saw them as well, and over in Australia. So it'll be very interesting to see how that proposition develops under their core offering.
I think whatever your views of Robert May are, or his technology, or what he's been working on, you will not find a better example of almost like a true zealot for our industry. He really stands up for the little guy most times, and also pushes that message of everything that's good. Nice to see the guy really sort of take it somewhere, and look forward to seeing good things to come. Mr. Jim Parker, I'd like to thank you on behalf of the industry. That's my role now. I get to thank people for their work.
Best show ever. I tell you what, there's a hard act to follow.
Well, you said it best yourself. Anything can and will happen on these podcasts, and we do this entirely unplanned. But I'd like to thank you for joining us, because you are one of I think you tend to support everything that we do, and I see you on commenting on basically every industry podcast that goes live, and you walk the walk and you talk the talk, and there's not many that do. So much love.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
And on that loving note,
official friend of the podcast. There you go.
I tell you what, I'm quite privileged. Am I the first person then?
I think so.
Yeah, you are, but don't worry. We will reuse the shit out of this to go back to the start of it again. You watch us tell everyone from now on, friend of the podcast. Anyway, Jim, thank you very much. I think genuinely what you're doing out there is, as you said, you can't recreate what you're doing, what your personal brand is. Mr. Watkins, who kicked you off, as you said there, you've run with his theme, but you've really created the niche and done your own thing. And I think that's
Jim,
what it's about.
Before we go, we've got occasionally we get odd requests from people that are watching that are too afraid to put them in the comments, and they text me privately. Could you say the word Waitrose again, please, for Megan 18?
Waitrose.
Oh.
Is she swooning with that?
Oh, smouldering.
Excellent. Well, I think that's coming to a very different show, but we've done our part for Sunday. Hope all of you have a fantastic day and look forward to obviously kicking off the week perfectly tomorrow. Jim, once again, thanks very much. Mintzy, you have a good day.
Take care, guys.